Assalamu alaikum, hello and welcome. I'm Shazia, joining you on the Nutrition Show on Unity FM 93.5 FM. I'm really excited to have you all join me today for a discussion on topics related to nutrition, which I hope may support you and your loved ones with better health and well-being. As always, and before I get into the topic of the day, I want to remind listeners that all information shared on the show is general in nature. For anyone with medical issues or concerns, whether they be related to today's topic or otherwise, please be sure to seek medical advice from your own general practitioner. So I'm sure many of you, like me, will agree that this year has flown by. I can't believe 2023 is almost over, with 2024 around the corner. It seems that with every passing year, time seems to go even faster than it did the year before. And quite frankly, I find it quite scary. And oftentimes I find myself in this kind of period of maybe not so much reflection, but sometimes regret, thinking, what did I actually achieve this year? So really, it is time for a bit of reflection, a bit of a self-assessment of the year gone, celebrating the good times and achievements, appreciating the challenges and the patience that we may have had or not had. You know, it's variable. We can't really say it's the same for each and every one of us. And also working to prepare for something better, if God wills. So even having that kind of opportunity to reflect is a blessing. We need to be taking account of ourselves all the time. And this is something that's kind of, quite fundamental to our belief system as well. We want to take account of ourselves before we are accounted. And in many ways, that same principle can be applied to health and well-being as well. We need to kind of actively pursue health and well-being rather than expect it to fall on a plate. Excuse the pun. So for me personally, I've had a lot of challenges this year, and some of these have been nutrition or well-being related. So I've got a lot to reflect back on, and then I've got a lot to plan for the following year. So what I thought was, for today's show, I could share a little bit of that planning that I've been trying to get started, so that 2024 doesn't have the same kind of outcome as 2023, because I feel personally, for me, I didn't really achieve the health goals that I was looking to achieve this year. But saying that, I have been in the middle of a house move and had other things happen, so I have got some reasons why that may not have taken kind of the best route as perhaps I'd probably intended to have done. So on that note then, I want to kind of share some tips, some kinds of ideas that you may also wish to incorporate. It's something that I'm intending to do, and these are kind of very early ideas, so they're at the kind of a draft stage, and I might throw them all away well into the year. But it's something just to kind of get me started, because I feel personally, if I don't write something down, I find it very hard to complete. So my plans then today are going to be broken down into a couple of points. Now, these can be lengthened into further points and further detail, and by all means, you're welcome to take these points away and do that for yourself, because you may find then that detail will help you generate a plan that's more specific to you and those people that you influence, whether that's your family, whether that's your your colleague, whether that's someone you work with, or whoever it may be, whatever your living circumstances are like. So but I would say, what I will suggest is use that information to enable yourself to do that. That's the kind of the idea behind today's show. And not every one of us work in the same way. Some of us like doing things sort of having a mental list, which I think is really quite difficult. Some of us like to have it written down on paper. Some of us need to see it every day on a wall. Some of us will use our smartphones or our tablet, whatever it might be. You know, we might have a fancy device for it. You know, we're all different. And, you know, what I'm trying to kind of sort of look at is whichever means you decide to use, take on board the points that I'm going to mention in the sense of a very kind of rough plan to get you started, because nutrition is a journey. It's something that requires quite a lot of work. It's something that requires commitment. You're going to have failures along the way. You're going to feel like wanting to give up. It's like any big thing in life. You need to plan. And planning is essential, because you'll find, like 2023 disappeared, 2024 will also disappear. Time does not wait for you. You need to kind of take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and make the most of each week, each month, you know, each quarter, whatever you want to divide your time into, you know, before the end of 2024. Okay, so as I've said, positive nutrition doesn't just happen. The changes need to be worked on. They need time and attention, like anything else that's going to be important in your life. So whilst you start to think about your New Year's resolutions, you may wish to utilize some of these points. Now, I'm not really one for New Year's resolutions, because I think positive change should start at any time of the year. I don't really feel for myself personally that I need to wait for a particular time in the year that I'm going to say, okay, well, I haven't done so well in the last year. I need to make better change this year. However, since many people do this and it does work for some of us, I think it was kind of an ideal time to put this in there. So, you know, if you missed the January, start point, don't think that's the end of it and you got to wait till the next year, because that's absolutely silly. Start at any time, because making the start is oftentimes the hardest bit, and getting that, you know, that momentum going is actually one of the biggest challenges that we may all face at some stage. I know I do, and I'm sure many of you will resonate with me. So, you know, think about what changes you want to make for yourself and for your families. Think about where you want to be at the end of 2024, if that does help you. I mean, you may want goals that you want to achieve midway through 2024, quarter of the way through, and that's really good, because smaller goals, smaller milestones, I think are really helpful in the grand scheme of things. But you want to try and kind of have a vision, something to work towards, because that does help you on your journey. And, you know, as the saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, you know, without that planning, you're not going to really achieve what you may have otherwise have achieved. I mean, when I look back at my years of study, the best times were when I was at school, because I had a timetable to follow. And I need something as specific as that to kind of get myself going and achieving. And if you're the same, do the same. You know, you don't need to show it to everyone if it embarrasses you. You know, if you don't timetable in, if you don't plan something in, it's very likely that you'll either forget about it, you'll miss it, you'll procrastinate, you'll put something else in there, or, you know, you'll just kind of overlook it for another reason. So it's a very powerful and very basic tool that we can all use. And you don't need anything fancy. If you want to make it as simple as possible, you just need to draw out a timetable, print one off the internet with the days of the week across one side, times, or whatever it may be that you want to break it down into across the other side, and and away you go. And I want to emphasize that it's that starting, it's that kind of initiation of the process that's the most important. And you'll find that it does get easier as it sort of progresses, and you'll find ways and means that work for you individually, because we are individuals. Some of us will struggle with one kind of method of improvement, whereas another person may kind of fly through it and find that, you know, it works really well. So, it can be really hard to get that, to see that end goal if you're not really a planning type of person. You've got to kind of have like this kind of strategic way. It's got to be planned, very much like maybe a business trip, or a very expensive holiday. It's got to be planned. You want to make the most out of each day. Remember, time is a gift. Like health is a gift, time is a gift. We want to utilize these gifts in the best possible way. And oftentimes these are gifts that we actually do waste until we find that we've run out of time and we've lost our health, and we don't want to find ourselves in these situations. So if I wanted to sort of start with a client who was struggling with their health, what would I suggest to them? And this would be a family member as well, or a friend that I'm having a conversation with. I would kind of talk them through a process that I think could help. Again, you might want to throw this process out the bin, out through the window in the bin, and that's absolutely fine. But it's going to give you some pointers and some hints that you can start looking at for yourself and working on. So I'm going to try and use an example, a nutrition related example, that you can so you can see what I mean to illustrate these points. So they're quite meaty in and of themselves, as I mentioned, and they can be broken down further. But use them as kind of like a topic area that you can explore further yourself. You can break them down into individualized topics and look at what you can do to try and incorporate them into a plan for longer term and better nutrition, and therefore better health. So these are not exhaustive, but they're just to kind of get you on that kind of bandwagon. So remember, any advice that I do share on today's show, as I mentioned at the beginning, is for education and empowerment purposes only. It's not there to replace any medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I can't support you in that way. You would have to speak to your own medical provider, because they know you best and they'll be able to give you the best advice. Okay, so just to get started then, the first thing I would always say to someone is set the baseline. So you want to take account of where you are today. Okay, so this is not about naming and shaming yourself, making yourself feel rubbish. I mean, we get a lot of that anyway. We don't need to do it to ourselves. It's about getting that baseline established and working out where you are today. Why? Because that's going to help you as a marker, as a measure, as a measurement tool to see how far you progress every time you look at a milestone. So you want to get that baseline in any form that suits you well. So it might be that my diet today looks like this. So you might want to say, for example, write yourself a diet diary for a week. Write down everything that you eat and drink, including snacks, including confectionery, including, desserts and treats you've had. Put them all in and keep that as your baseline. Alternatively, you might want to write it down in sentence form, saying, I'm eating X number of vegetables a day. I'm doing X litres of water a day. My diet looks like and does not look like. So you want to take account of your diet. You want that kind of baseline picture ready there for you for when you then start to measure yourself. Okay, so what you need to remember also is that when you start to do this, it's not about judging yourself, as I've mentioned. We're not here to punish ourselves, because that's, like I said, that's kind of something that is there all the time in some shape or form. You don't want to add to that. And I know it's easier said than done, particularly if you haven't achieved health-related goals in particular in previous years, whether that was an exercise goal or whether it was a food-related goal. And, I'm probably the best example. I do it all the time, and it's not a good kind of way to be, because, in the first instance, the fact is that you should be giving yourself some credit if you're thinking about making change, because that means that you've actually identified that there's a problem to deal with in the first place. Because if you don't identify a problem, you can't work on it. So, the fact that you've decided that change is needed, that in and of itself means that you're due credit. So, be proud of yourself to have even recognized that. And, the next step is then to identify what you're going to do about it. So you've identified the problem. Now you want to put a plan in place that's going to help you to address that problem. So that's a really good way of beginning. Okay, so, you're recognizing that, there's some level of discipline, some level of planning that is now required. You could otherwise continue the way you are and come to the end of another year, if that is your kind of, your kind of trigger, if you like, for the year ahead. And you could say, yeah, I'm in the same place as I was, 12 months ago. And you've done no justice to yourself. So, definitely kudos to yourself if you've identified that you need to make change. Now, the other side of having that mentality is that it gets you into the wrong frame of mind. We don't need more negativity than we already have, coming into us from all sorts, whether that's outside, whether that's from other people. We don't want to add to the negativity. So you want to try and steer yourself away from the negative mindset. Again, easier said than done, but it's a good thing to hear, because oftentimes we find ourselves trapped in this place and we need someone else to tell us. We need someone else to say, look, you're in that place. Okay. So getting yourself out of that negative frame of mind. It's also wasteful of time. Time is a resource, it's limited. We want to make the most of every moment that we have. So you don't want to be wasting time, kind of thinking about the past, which you can't change, you can only learn from. And you want to then put those learning points into perspective and utilize them. They've got to become actionable. You've got to convert them now into something that you can do, which is different, which is productive, which is going to give you the outcome that you're looking for. And it's about getting yourself into a place of motivation, and reflecting, understanding, and writing a plan are all ways and means that we can motivate ourselves. And you can do that by connecting with others as well, like-minded people who are on a similar journey. So we want to get out of this destructive effect, and we want to start to build. We want to start to move ourselves forward. We can only look to the future and what's in our control rather than look back and regret. So, that emotional effect that comes in, that needs to be reduced. You've got to see as a plan that you're going to put into effect, and you're going to make the best of the time that you have. Okay, so how can you do this then? So as I mentioned, the first step is kind of establishing a baseline. So what I would probably suggest is, and you can break this down, so don't be overwhelmed, break it down, but you want to see that 12-month vision. You want the plan, and you want to start populating those months of the year. So whether you do that in January or later on, it's entirely up to yourself. Obviously, it depends on your schedule, what the holiday looks for you like. But that's what you want to try and do. You want to have that 12-month plan written down in front of you. It's got to be something that you can visualize. A lot of us are visual learners and visual kind of planners, and I find that that's quite useful. So you want to see where you are in 12 months time. And it's kind of like having that vision of 12 months and working backwards. So you've got to think, okay, in 12 months time, I want to be, I don't know, a certain weight, for example. So what steps are you going to take in the next 12 months to get you to that goal? So it's working backwards now. And having that plan in place. Okay, so you want to do this by looking at small, actionable steps that you're going to take to support you getting closer to those nutrition habits that you need to get you to those health goals. You need to make a start, and you need to keep it consistent. So there are key words that I'm mentioning in this description. So you're planning, small, actionable, consistency, and you want to make sure that you make a start in the first place. Okay, so those, small and consistent, if anything, are the main two words that you really need to focus on. So let's take an example about how you might want to try and implement this. Okay, so let's take somebody then who is only consuming one vegetable a day. Okay, so as I've mentioned on previous talks, if you've had the opportunity to hear them, even the NHS now is advocating 10 fruit and veg portions a day. And in the nutrition world, that can actually be higher. So, most of us aren't even achieving 5 a day. So, this is quite a stretch of a target for many of us. So, whilst I kind of emphasize that you shouldn't punish yourself about where you are, it's about recognizing where you are. So that's your baseline, that one vegetable a day. And you want to kind of work out what you can actually do within the year. So that might be 5 a day at the end of 12 months, which is amazing, providing it's consistent and you're doing it on a regular basis. Because, we can all say, I want to get to 14 fruit and veg a day by the end of 12 months, which is amazing. But it doesn't really look amazing when you get to the end and actually you've only managed to do that for 6 months of the year, and you've kind of found yourself, fatigued and tired and fed up, and you've kind of thrown your plan out the window because it was overwhelming for you. So the idea is that you want to make it small, actionable, and you want to make it consistent so that you do it throughout the year. So say, for example, then this one person only has the one vegetable a day, every day, and they want to increase their target to say maybe 3 a day over that say 6 to 12 month period. It doesn't mean that you're fixated on that 3. If you get to 6 months and you've done that consistently over a good few months consecutively, you might then want to increase that to 5 a day. So it does very much depend on your progress as well, which is how we work as nutritional therapists. I mean, when I see clients, I look at their progress on a week-to-week basis, and if they're working really well, I might want to add a bit more in there, make it a bit more challenging for them. However, if they're finding it a little bit overwhelming, I might drop some of the expectations and our plans that we agreed together, just to give them that time to catch up and to kind of get to a better place before we ramp up the speed again. So it's fluid. It doesn't have to be set in stone. So that's another thing to take on board. So not to get yourself into a place of overwhelm and throwing it all out the window. Okay, so now you've decided that you want to get to that 3 portions a day over that 6 to 12 month period. How do you do this? So you've got your baseline, which is your 1 a day. You want to get to your 3 a day. So what you want to do is you want to break your steps down into months. Okay, so you could even do it as weeks, which I think is probably more realistic, but start with your months at least, so that you can see month on month what you're intending to do. Now, I would probably do it as a chart, and I'd have it maybe on my kitchen wall. So if you've got an empty wall that you can use, have a chart that you've drawn up with the months on, and you want to start populating this chart. So you can use sticky notes if you want. You can use stickers. You can do it any way you want to. You can get really creative depending on how much you want to kind of get involved in this. You can even have like a notice board up, or a sheet that you've laminated that you can rub off and start again with if you want to. It can be really something that works for you and your family. Now, for some of you who are maybe homeschooling or teaching from home, you're probably used to this already. So all you're doing now is you're changing the subject area. You're making health a part of your learning journey, like you would do with any other subject. Okay, so get this chart up and on your wall so you can see every day. Now, if you stick it on the back of a door in a room that you never go into, you're defeating the objective. So you need to be able to see this chart every day. Now, if you're in a family situation, I'd get the whole family involved. Okay, so get the kids on board. They will have their contribution, believe me, however young they are. So don't leave anyone out, because nutrition changes actually involve everyone in a household. It's not just the one person working on their own, because it's a life change that we're asking you to make. It's not about sort of a simple thing that you can do on your own, because you are going to impact those around you. So then the next thing I would suggest is you need to go online and download the rainbow chart for fruit and veg. Okay, so like you can find these free on the internet. These are going to give you basically all the colours of fruit and veg in each colour of the rainbow, essentially. So all your reds are on there, your oranges, your greens, blues, your greys, whites, every colour. And it'll give you kind of the variety. It'll give you ideas about the kinds of foods that you can incorporate. Some of these you're going to already be familiar with. Some of these you might see them for the first time, which is amazing, because you want to always look at variety. Remember, our gut microbiome is going to be far better and far more thankful if we're going to give the bugs in our gut a variety of food, a variety of kind of fibers and nutrients and everything else that they need to thrive best, because our health is so dependent on the health of our microbiome. So you want to kind of get this sheet ready, printed off, so that you can then start utilizing the information for ideas that you're going to inevitably get from these. Okay, so this is where you might want to get the kids on board, because it's such a fun activity, and they'll start to set good habits from the outset, particularly for the younger kids. The second thing I would suggest then is to download, and you can do these if you search, pop it into your browser, you'll find these easily come up. You want to download some editable shopping lists. And why I'm saying editable is because you can take out some of the things that you don't need, and you can start putting in the things that you do need, and you can print out or have these on your phone, however you want to do it, week on week, however, whenever you go shopping, incorporating those ideas that now you can start to get from that color chart. Yeah, so you want to sort of start doing this, because it will help you, first of all, buy what you actually need. Also limit what you don't need, which you'll find will develop over time if you're not at that point yet. They're very useful. It's a very good time saving technique as well, because I find when I go shopping without a list, I'm just kind of like thinking in the store, what did I come here for, what did I need, and you're just wasting time, and oftentimes you're just kind of bringing back things you didn't really need and overstocking on things that you had so much of, and finding that you didn't really get what you wanted to get. So it's going to give you a whole load of benefits that you perhaps didn't even think of. So you want to try and incorporate those kinds of tools into your journey. Okay, so you want to then go online and find healthy, easy recipes. Now, these are keywords. I'm quite a novelist still in the kitchen. I'm still learning, and I'm finding ways and means to kind of make my diet nutritious, but I don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen, especially if I've got a heavy day planning things, working on things. So I look for easy, healthy, nutritious recipes, and you can type in other bits if you want to make it more specific. But you'll find that oftentimes just on the first page of that search, you'll have a whole plethora of ideas that you can utilize. Click on the links, start looking at recipes, what kinds of foods are incorporated into these recipes. Again, it's providing you with a way and means to kind of start seeing what you could start then trialing in your home. And actually, that is the next step. You want to try some of these recipes out. Start with the really easy, simple ones. I mean, on my cheat days, I just look for things I don't even have to cook. I will just want to kind of put them together. It's kind of like constructing things for me. So that could be your, things like your smoothies, your salads, your no-bake, healthy treats. They're so easy, And again, you can get the kids on board because you're not necessarily having to use any equipment, apart from obviously when you're having to chop things with knives, etc. But if all you're doing is constructing something, you can get the kids on board. And once you started to trial some of these foods, you'll start to notice what you like and what you don't like. And what you want to start to do is build up kind of a list of the things that you do like. Okay, so start where you feel comfortable. And remember, we're going to build on this, so it's never kind of stopping at the basics. It's about establishing the basics, but in a really good and healthy, productive way. So now you've started to try these healthy recipes, and you know what they are. You might want to bookmark them, you might want to print them out, whatever's easier for you. And then, I mean, if they're easy, and then you've done them a couple of times, you probably remember how to make them anyway. And then you want to start adding these to the chart. Okay, so you want to start adding them to the chart. Now, you want a kind of a chart that's giving you a 12-month overview, and then you can take subdivisions, so you can go month by month as a sub-chart. So you can break it down and look at what you can incorporate on a day-to-day basis when it comes to incorporating these additional vegetables that you're hoping to kind of make part and parcel of your day-to-day nutrition needs. Okay, so, you know, and you might find that that first month is just about kind of finding that comfortable zone. It's just about looking for things. It's just about getting all these kind of lists ready. It's about, you know, working out what your chart's going to look like, where it's going to go, educating your family. You know, it's going to be kind of that phase where you're getting used to a change. And even if you did that for 2 months, there's nothing wrong with that. The point that you've made a start, the point that you're serious about change, you know, and that dedication that you're already kind of you're showing is, you know, is exemplary in and of itself. So give yourself the credit. It's because it is definitely due if you've started that already. Once you've started to kind of populate your week on or month kind of chart, you can start to see, you know, what you're doing day in, day out. And, you know, this kind of does help, because I don't know if you have this in your home, but some days we're like, what should we cook? I can't be bothered to cook. Let's just get a takeaway. You know, and you're stressed out and you're probably taking it on somebody else, right? So it takes that away from it as well, which is really good, because I find that, you know, preparation, even with food, is highly beneficial. It really does make things easier for you. So you'll see, you know, at a glance what you're doing for that week, if you've done it per week or per month. It's really easy. And it helps kind of, you know, make that week a little bit smoother when it comes to one task that you have to do, which is to eat. Okay, and you can apply this to any goal that you want to achieve. So it might be, you know, I don't know, adding more anti-inflammatory foods to your diet. You know, you might find that you've got an element of inflammation in your body. You know, to be fair, most of us do, and you can start to kind of you know, fit that in. You can make that your goal. Depends on what you're trying to achieve. You can also think about, you know, reducing things. It's not always necessarily about adding things in nutrition, which is what I do in the first instance, because it's easier and it's kind of it comes across less overwhelming for the client. But if you're like at a later stage and you're kind of more developed in the process, you might want to start taking things out. Now, one of the biggest ones I talk about is sugar. So how do you take out sugar? How quickly do you want to take out the sugar? What's your kind of your strategy, your plan to do this? Again, using the same kind of method. And you know, this is actually very useful, because, you know, I did mention this before. I had a client who was finding it very hard to come off sugar, and I had to find a way to wean her off, because she was so addicted to sugar, and we all are in some way, shape or form. You know, it's such an addictive food, and we want to try and educate ourselves, understand why we need to do it, and then we need to get these resources ready, and then may put a plan in place so that 6 months down the line, a year down the line, we're ready to, you know, to go sugar free, essentially. You know, it's a process, it needs work. And you know, on the same token, you might want to reduce processed foods. You know, look at what you're buying, look at which foods come under the processed category. Again, education is imperative. You need to learn and understand what whole foods are, what processed foods are, why they're a problem, and see how you can start to reduce them. So, you can apply this to anything. And, if you find a different method that works for you, great. But, if you want to make a start, why not give this a trial? I mean, I'm going to be doing this and seeing how I go. And, the idea is that you want to make the start. That's the kind of key point for this part of the process. So please stay tuned as we're due for a short break now. So you're listening to me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM on the Nutrition Show. So I'm talking to you today about New Year's resolutions from a nutrition perspective. Back with you shortly. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Nutrition Show. You're joining me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM. Before the break, I was talking about ways and means that you can start to look at your nutrition health goals from a New Year's perspective, so to speak, and the ways and means that you can start this process in terms of the actionable steps that you can use, the resources that you can utilize. And for the second half of the show, I'm going to be expanding on that, looking at other ways that you can get this process rolling, whether that be kind of using that chart that I mentioned or otherwise. So the idea is that you get started and implement this so that you can see your health in 12 months' time. So whenever you start, I mean, that's down to you, but that's the idea behind this. Everyone will be different and everyone will have their own preferred method after trial and error to see what works well for them. Just bear in mind that the information that is shared on today's show is general in nature. It does not constitute medical advice in any way. Please do speak to your general practitioner when you do make any changes, if you have any health concern or you're worried about anything, because they will be able to support you the best. So going on from the charts then and the kind of resources that you want to try and pull off, you want to then kind of fit in some dates where you review your progress periodically. And I would make this regular. Don't just kind of put in a review date at the end of the month, and then the next one is 2 months later, and the next month the one falls off the calendar. So you want to kind of make this a regular review thing, like you would have very much if you were at work and you were having a work appraisal or a review or whatever it's called in your kind of area of work. You want that kind of process where you talk about what you've achieved, what you've not achieved, why you've not achieved it, and it's kind of having that reflection. Depending on how far apart you want to do these, it's absolutely key, because that's what's going to help you to measure your success. Okay, it's going to help you measure how far you've come from that baseline. So say, for example, you've taken a month or two to kind of get into the process, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Then in month 3, you decide to have your review after maybe a couple of weeks of having stabilized. Now, you want to use that third month, to see how far you got with your vegetable intake from that 1 a day upwards. And you want to sort of really break it down and see what you've actually managed to achieve. Okay, so from the recipes you might have utilized maybe soups, stews, stir fries, salads, smoothies. They're really easy. I call them the 5 S's. You might have used those to help you get those vegetables in. I find that they're amazing ways to get in vegetables that I don't really want to eat, kind of like raw. Sometimes, like mushrooms, for example, I always use that example because I find them really hard to eat because of their texture. But you want to try and look at how far you've come from that initial baseline. So there's nothing wrong with making that a month later than, like I said, from the first day you really got into it. So you might want to kind of bring that down to 2 weekly or weekly later on, and change them slightly depending on how you going forward. But you want to try and fit them in regularly. That's the bottom line, because if you don't, there's no way to measure. You want to always be going back to your baseline. How far have I got? How well am I doing? Is this working? These are the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself. And, do this as a family, because everyone will have a different perspective. Everyone will have some something to contribute, and make sure everyone does contribute, because it is a family affair. It's something that you want to really, get to the level where everyone has a buy-in. Everyone needs to be part of that process. Again, not to punish yourself if you haven't achieved where you were supposed to be going. It's just to reflect, to assess, to measure. And then what you can do then is you can look at what you're going to do next. Now you can, set this as a date on your calendar, or your chart. Put it on your phone with an alarm. I would definitely do that, because I'm terrible. And I would do that the day before, not on the day, because at least if it requires a bit of preparation, you're ready to do it. So you've got to be committed to this. It's not going to just happen. So set an alarm, mark it on the chart, and you can even make it a weekend thing if you can't get together during the week, because obviously schooling, work, etc. does take a lot out of us on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so once you've got that review kind of period, that review kind of frequency established, make sure the dates are on. You know that you're gonna have an accountability day, if you like, or time frame on that day, where you have to sit down and look at what you've been doing. And it's basically about how many fruit and veg have I managed to get in over the course of the last week on a daily basis. Take an average. Obviously some days will be better than others. Maybe you'll do 5 on one day and maybe 2 on the next day. So regardless of whether or not you've kept to that 3 a day, you're still maybe in the week averaging out to maybe 3-4 a day, possibly. Some weeks might be harder. That's okay. This means that you need to do a different level of preparation and a different level of thinking. And this is where batch cooking, preparation in advance, making food in bulk and freezing and kind of utilizing those kinds of tricks and means, they can be really useful. So, there are ways to kind of tackle these kind of collateral issues that come up. So they do exist. So you want to measure. That's the key point here. You want to measure, and you do that by reviewing your progress periodically. Okay, so on the back of that, then what you then want to try and do is you want to reward yourself. Now this is going to sound really funny, but it's so important. We kind of work on the back of like a reward system, a reward and punishment system sometimes, and it's so powerful that we want to try and get ourselves in a place where we're constantly looking to improve ourselves and recognizing our achievements. We need to recognize the little things that we do, so that we're able to take them to a bigger level. Because you're not going to recognize huge achievements if you don't recognize the small ones. Okay, so if you achieve your goal, say for example at the first review, you might want to consider treating yourself and your family. Now that's something for you to decide how you do that. Remember, nutrition is a moderate thing. It's not about extremism. We want to kind of go for moderation. We want to eat well most of the time. However, having a treat once in a while is absolutely fine. It's normal. We're human. And actually, it should be encouraged, because, this is not about going from one extreme to another. It's about recognizing that we're human. We can do this the majority of the time, and that's what we're training towards. But we want to be able to treat ourselves once in a while to give us that good feeling that we all deserve. We all kind of live off that, don't we? We need that kind of the goodness in our lives to be able to get us to the next level. Okay, so you've reached those 2 or 3 that 3 a day for maybe a month. It's time to a reward is well in course. It's well due to you. Now, if you're a parent home tutoring, you might be using a starring system for your kids. I don't know, tuition that you're doing on a particular subject. You can use the same system for nutrition. you can do that. And it's actually quite effective because kids like that kind of thing. And I know I've noticed it when I've been tutoring, that it works quite well. And, use something like that, if you want to, or if whatever it is that you've got in place that works for another area of your kind of learning, utilize that. There's no reason why you can't. But the thing is, you need to be able to recognize that achievement. Okay, so you might want to then decide from that milestone what your next reward is. So it gives you the kind of that encouragement, that motivation to be working even harder towards that next goal. And you'll find that your kids will actually take that on board even better than you will. So you want to kind of use that as an incentive for your next reward. And you can make those as big or as small as you want, but make them grow in size, and make them such that all the family will benefit from them. You don't want to exclude people. You want to make sure that everyone is rewarded for their good work. Okay, so make it unique and special. It's going to reinforce that positive behavior. This is what we're looking for. A lot of nutrition is actually about mindset. It's about behavior. It's about how we think about things, because our behaviors are affected by how we think. So we've got to kind of work on the two together. So we want to try and condition ourselves to get ourselves into the best place mentally, so that we can get ourselves into the best place physically, nutrition-wise as well. Okay, so these are the habits that we're trying to create. And if you look at a lot of this productivity, learning, you'll see that habits are created in that month. In Ramadan, when we're fasting, that month has left us with such amazing habits by the end of 30 days. And also helped us to come away from bad habits in 30 days. So you can see the wisdoms behind just that month alone. Obviously we fast for the reason that because it's something that we need to do as Muslims, but we've got so many additional secondary benefits, and you can use that as an example when you're teaching your children to say, look, how much we achieve in a month when we're fasting. We can do the same in the first month of our nutrition change. And if you don't meet that milestone, it doesn't matter. This is where you need to reflect and see what you can actually do to kind of address that. So maybe the recipes weren't quite right. Maybe you didn't get your shopping done on time, or you didn't find the foods you were looking for. Maybe you had a month where work was particularly strenuous. Maybe you had illness to deal with in that month. So there's going to be lots of things happening. Life happens, but you have to find ways and means to prepare yourself so that there's always this buffer that, once you've found recipes that work, you want to kind of get yourself into a place where, you've got, who's cooking that night, what you've got in your fridge that night, you know that you've got food prepared just as a backup in the fridge that you can safely defrost the night before, or kind of heat up, whatever it might be, ready to have on the next day. So you've got these kind of backup processes in place, and you learn that as you go along, because you're going to have months like these. You're going to have difficult days, and it's not about knocking yourself. It's about recognizing them and looking for ways and means to bulletproof yourself so that you don't have them on a regular basis. And that's kind of where working with someone can be really beneficial, because they do that for you. They hold your hand. I do that with my clinics. In my clinics, I will hold my client's hand literally, because you're living their life. You're trying to see what they're doing on a pretty much day-to-day basis at the beginning, especially when they're struggling, and you're looking for ways and means to help them on their journey. And just because one thing doesn't work doesn't mean nothing else is going to work. It's about looking for ways, being clever, using all the resources available to you to find ways that work for you and for your family. Okay, so amongst all of that, and I guess this is kind of something that envelopes everything, we need to be in a state of gratitude. And this is something I've had to have a huge and long learning journey with myself personally. is that we have to be coming from a place of gratitude. I mean, if we look at the world, the situation today, and it's been going on for a while. Sometimes it's far worse. You can see that we are, where we are, like in the UK, where I am, we're so privileged to have access to so much food, to have access to so much variety, to choice. We're in a position to be able to complain every day if we want to be, but really, it's such a destructive habit because it takes away the blessing of what we have. It's a time also to reflect on others. What are they going through? And the fact that they can't make those changes, and how privileged we are that we can. We have that freedom, we have that ability. Even from our faith, if you look at our faith, so many times we are told to be grateful. We are encouraged to be grateful, to instill that, beautiful characteristic in ourselves. If you look at the Prophet, peace upon him, how many times did he not have the necessities that we need to survive? And he was always in a state of gratitude. And we need to be able to we need to be able to follow that. We need to be able to find ways and means to be grateful. And I mean, over the years when I've studied and I've learned about gratitude, even if it means that you need to journal where you write down what you're grateful for, do it, because it's so powerful. Before you go to bed at night, write down 3 things that you're grateful for before you go to bed. There's going to be so many more, but if it's only 3 that you can do because you're thinking about it and it's making you do it, please do this, because you'll find that it'll change how you think. Even if it's, I'm going to bed having had, 3 meals, throughout the course of the day, whatever they were, regardless of whether or not they were nutritional. So this is a side point. That's not what I'm saying you should do. I'm talking about nutrition here, but, that gratitude is going to set the scene for your longer term, health and well-being, whether we kind of see that straight away or not. Have that in you, grow that in you, instill it in your children, in your families, because it is life-changing. And you'll find that challenges that you're faced with are far smaller when you're coming from a place of gratitude than when you're coming from a place of complaint. Because we could complain about everything. We complain about the weather, for instance. We complain about the litter on the street. I do this, I'm coming from, these are my examples, and I think it's better to have that gratitude instead, because first of all, it puts you into the right frame of mind to learn and to absorb and to better yourself. And secondly, it's utilizing time in the best way. You're finding that you're actually building your character. And these are all essential, actually, when it comes to building good nutrition habits, because none of these can be separated. They all come as a package. The more you think something is unique when you're dealing with something, actually, you've got so many more factors around it that are going to affect it, whether it's directly affected or indirectly. So, it really does help. It helps you to realign yourself. It helps you to re-emphasize your goals. It might help you to redefine your goals. It really does help support you in that learning journey and that learning process. The other thing that I find is really helpful is to have, and I've talked about having your family and working with your family, which is kind of going to help you to do this, is to have an accountability buddy. So doing nutrition on your own is really tough, because who's there to kind of motivate you when you're demotivated? Okay, if you're working with someone, it's a different story. And even then, you're not going to be working with someone, endlessly. It's always going to be something that you need to work towards. But if you're on your own, for instance, you live on your own, you want to really be thinking about finding someone who is serious about doing the same, looking to better themselves from a nutritional perspective, and think about working together. Now, your goals don't have to be the same. They can be different, but you want to be supporting each other from a kind of a strategic perspective, from a planning perspective, from a motivation perspective, from a kind of courage perspective. You want to be doing that on a regular basis to help each other. So on a day when you don't want to do so much in terms of preparing your meal, say for the next week, have that conversation with your accountability buddy and see if they can motivate you. And it's more often that they will than they won't, because it's unlikely that they're probably having an off day at the same time. And if they are, that's quite disastrous. But, if that is the case, then you need to find a plan B for that. But, oftentimes you'll find that you'll get that support and that motivation from that person that you trust and can kind of bounce off on a lower moment to kind of get you back on track. Now, that could be your spouse if you live in a family situation. It could be an older child. It could be a work colleague. It could be anyone. It's someone that you can actually, get on that journey with in that way to get yourselves both motivated, in particular on days when you're really low, because that will happen. It's going to be like any other investment you make in life. It's going to happen. You need to be prepared. Okay, so, these are kinds of things that you need to build in. So remember that, the food journey in and of itself, seems quite simple when you look at it from, a 12-month perspective. But actually that you're going to have lots of milestones along the way. There's going to be lots of hurdles, challenges. There's going to be points of highs and lows. And, documenting these, working with these, finding what works, what doesn't work, reading around these areas. When you notice something, go and have a look at whether or not, something has been done before to kind of counteract that experience, if it's a negative experience. And if it's a good experience, why not read about it to find out how you can enhance that experience. So you want to be trying to make it very much like a course you would do. It's a journey. It's very much something that you want to take seriously enough that you're looking for that qualification, if you like, at the end, that all-important goal, that all-important kind of achievement. And nutrition doesn't kind of stop when you've achieved one goal. You're going to probably identify another goal in that process, maybe halfway through, quarter of the way through, maybe even towards the end, maybe even after, because you've decided to prolong that goal. Maybe you want to go into another year with that same challenge, with that same kind of target, and that's absolutely fine. But you might want to then start applying it to another goal when that starts to kind of appear. Maybe a life change has happened, maybe something unexpected has happened, maybe something else has occurred that you want to make happen sooner rather than later. Our life is dynamic. You've got to make your nutrition dynamic as well, and the process of getting closer to your health goals. So there's lots there. I appreciate that a lot of it wasn't really kind of about food, but is about food in a roundabout way. It's just that we do see these issues in our work as nutritional therapists, because we can't exclude them. They're there, they're part and parcel of that journey. So it's very easy for me to turn around and say to someone, right, you need to eat 5 pieces of fruit and veg a day by the end of the week. It's very easy for me to say that. And actually, it's probably destructive for me to do that to a client, because not only have I set them a target that's probably unachievable, they're already feeling in a low place. They're already feeling quite rubbish about themselves because they're not eating any at all. So you've got to be very careful with how you talk to yourself. We talk to ourselves more than we talk to anyone else. So you've got to be kind to yourself. You've got to come from a place of compassion. And this is something I'm learning, so I know that there's a difference. I've seen it in myself. It's a long journey. Oftentimes you'll find that you're taking a couple of steps backwards before you start to move forward again. That's perfectly fine. You want to make sure that overall you've taken some steps forward, and that, you know, period of having the resources, putting in the review process, setting that baseline, having an accountability buddy, being grateful, being present, this will all help you on that health journey. So I've talked a lot today about kind of the practical aspects around planning, how you want to get closer to your health goals. And I hope that some of this has kind of resonated with you. Maybe you've tried it and found it's worked. Maybe you've tried it and found it's absolutely rubbish. Whatever it may be, find what works for you, but taking on the points perhaps that I've mentioned today. So I hope what you've heard today has been insightful and gets you looking into what could work for you and your family while seeking support from your own healthcare provider. I would love to hear your thoughts, and feedback, as you know, is always appreciated. It helps me learn. It helps me work out what I can talk about on future shows. Always grateful. It's always so useful for me. I'm grateful for another opportunity to connect with you. So this is Shazia on the Nutrition Show on Unity FM 93.5 FM. I look forward to joining you again soon on the Nutrition Show. Take care until next time. Wassalamu alaikum.